Hey, what's going on, Inspires? Another day of learning awakes us all. Welcome back to the Amputate to Elevate Success podcast, where we turn adversity into advantage, amputating limiting beliefs and elevating success. I'm your host, John Register, two-time Olympic trials qualifier, combat Army veteran, amputee, Paralympic silver medalist, top 50 global leadership speaker, and Hall of Fame speaker. I still can't believe they let me into that club. I am back at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum here in beautiful downtown Colorado Springs, Colorado, Olympic City, USA. And I'm in front of my artificial leg and shoe that I used to win the silver medal at the Paralympic Games in Sydney, Australia. But listen, my journey hasn't been a straight shot to the top. I've experienced the riches to rags, to riches again, the ride firsthand. From standing on the brink of the Olympic Games at 2 Olympic trials to facing a life-changing injury. I had to amputate not just a limb, but my old mindset, so I could elevate into a new reality. It was when I realized I didn't overcome my amputation that I began to soar. And that's what this show is all about. Transformation, resilience, and owning your next chapter. So each week we dive deep with the powerhouse leaders, innovators, and disruptors who have had to make bold, sometimes painful choices to create their success. We're not just talking theories here. We're talking real life, hard-hitting stories that will challenge you, inspire you, and push you to think bigger. And today, oh my goodness, today's episode, you're in for something next level. But before we jump in, please hit that like, share, subscribe button, and drop a comment on what resonates most with you. If you're driving, well, maybe don't hit that button right now, but as soon as you get parked, get on it. All right, let's roll the intro. Today's guest is someone who elevates, empowers, and amplifies the voices that shape industries. He's a visionary, a vanguard, and a voice for change. I'm talking about Martin Perelmuter, the president and co-founder of Speakers Spotlight, one of the most influential speaker bureaus in the world. The conversation we had was so enlightening, so intense, and filled with such great leadership lessons that we are going to run this Elevate Life session in 2 parts. Part 1 is the one you are watching right now. And part 2, well, we'll come back next week and follow on back-to-back episodes. So let's continue. But Martin's journey didn't start in the world of keynote stages and standing ovations. Nope. He started as a corporate lawyer, grinding away at a prestigious international law firm before he made a bold leap into entrepreneurship. Nearly 30 years ago, Martin and his wife, Farah, co-founded Speakers Spotlight, driven by a mission to amplify voices that inspire change. Love that word, inspire. He is an unapologetic idealist, a firm believer that one great speech can ignite action and create lasting impact. His leadership in the speaking industry, has earned him global recognition, from guest lecturing at top universities to serving as the president of the International Association of Speakers Bureaus. But Martin isn't just about business. He's a voracious reader, a sports fanatic, and a music lover. And today, we're going to dig into his story. What did he have to amputate to elevate his success? What challenges did he face? And what lessons can we all learn, you and myself, take away to elevate our own life and career? This is a conversation you don't want to miss, so let's get into it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. So first question out the gate, what did you have to amputate in order to elevate your success in life when you left corporate law and co-founded Speaker Spotlight?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. And, it's so I was going down this track of law. I did my undergrad. I went to law school. I got good marks. I got into a top firm. Parents were happy. A lot of, got them off my back for a while, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction, except for one thing, which is I was miserable. I hated my job. I didn't tell anyone that, I showed up to work every day with a smile on my face. I worked 14, 16-hour days regularly, never complained. But inside, it was just, it was killing me. I was not happy. And I knew I had to make a change. It wasn't easy. I'll be honest. I didn't really talk to anyone about it other than Farah. She knew exactly where I was, but I didn't tell any of my friends or my family. But the trajectory to me leaving, actually, I didn't know exactly when I was going to quit, but I knew I was going to have to. And I remember one day waking up to go to work. It was a hot July morning, and I took the subway down to the office, and I worked through the morning. I went for lunch, and then I just had this feeling like I just wanted to go home and go to sleep and just take the afternoon off as a sick day. But I didn't. I went back to the office and I finished up the day. The next day, I got to the office. I didn't even want to start work. I wanted to turn around and go home. And the next day, I didn't want to leave the house. I remember walking out the door to the subway and thinking, I just want to turn around and go home and call in sick. And the next day, I didn't even want to get out of bed. And I don't think I was clinically depressed or anything like that. I just hated my job, to be honest. And so that day, I went to the office. I went to the managing partner in my firm's office. He was a busy guy, obviously. I knocked on his door and I asked him if he had a couple minutes. And he said, yeah, is everything okay? I said, everything's fine. I just need to talk to you for a couple minutes. And I told him I was going to leave the firm and leave the practice of law altogether. Told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Told me he couldn't let me do it. But I told him I made up my mind. And luckily I was able to go. For a moment, I thought, what do you mean he can't let me do it? Am I stuck here for months or years? But obviously I left, and it was a big thing. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew it was the right thing for me. So I guess what I had to sort of amputate in my life was this path that I was on that was very well sort of established. I'd worked hard. I got a lot of rewards for it, prestige, good salary. My family was happy with me. And all of those things on the outside look really great, but on the inside, I wasn't happy. And so I had to walk away from the security of a job, of a paycheck, and all the sort of accoutrements that go along with that. And so Farah and I, we both actually quit our jobs at the same time. She was working in marketing and PR. And so we went from 2 incomes to 0, basically overnight. And we went from both having really great jobs to starting a speakers bureau, which we weren't even exactly sure what that was at the time, but we had done some research, kind of had its general idea. And when you're 25 and you're young and naive enough to think you can do something, it's a great thing to have. We also, we didn't have any kids at the time. We didn't have a mortgage. So we were really responsible to no one other than ourselves. And, but it was really turning our back on that well-established, secure life. It meant that we had to stop going out for dinner with friends. We couldn't go on vacations. All the things that we did, because we had jobs and we had salaries and we had paychecks, we had to just sort of put that aside, kind of go back to living like students. But it was exciting. We were happy. We had no problem doing that. We were taking control of our destiny, of our lives and our futures. And we were doing something together, and that's something that felt like we were making a difference. So that's kind of a long answer, but that was sort of what happened just about 30 years ago when we kind of took this sort of entrepreneurial leap of faith.
I have 2 follow-up questions.
Yeah.
The first is, you left misery. You were not happy.
Yeah.
And there are many people who don't leave the misery. They stay there. I was one of those individuals that kept on in my past employer. I knew that I no longer aligned with the values of the organization. Not that the values were bad. It's just that I was no longer aligned with them.
Yeah.
And the question I have for you is, you now get a chance to see so many professional speakers, or those that are maybe about to make the choice to go from corporate or whatever their job is into a full-time professional speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of balancing those 2 things. I'm not really satisfied with the place I'm working at, where I'm earning a check every other Friday.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure I want to step in this whole thing and be an entrepreneur myself, because that scares me.
Yeah.
How do you coach somebody from your position now after 30 years? And I know you can see it. You can see it in somebody, whether or not they're ready or not. How do you coach that in somebody?
Yeah, it's interesting. About 10 or 15 years ago, I got a call from Canadian Lawyer Magazine, right? So it's sort of a magazine for lawyers in our country. And they were doing a story on lawyers that had non-traditional careers. And they had heard about me and they interviewed me and a handful of others. There was about 4 or 5 of us. They put us on the cover of the magazine. So first of all, my parents were really happy because I got on the cover of Canadian Lawyer Magazine, not for doing something stupid. So that was good. Uh, but as a result of that article's online somewhere, and I get these calls or not calls, but emails or LinkedIn requests a few times a year from someone who's in the sort of the position that I was in 30 years ago, and they read about it and they say, "Hey, would you have time to have a chat or grab a coffee?" And I always make the time for them because I didn't really have anyone to talk to then to deal with what I was dealing with. And the first thing I tell them is, look, I'm not going to tell you to quit your job to leave the career because I don't know what your situation is, your circumstances. If you have the means to survive for a while financially, if you have good support network with your family or friends or a partner. So it's not like everybody should do this. But for me, at that time, I had a bit of savings, so I knew I could live for like a year with no income coming in. So I kind of had a plan. We just like sort of jump off the cliff. So I always say, first of all, make sure if you're thinking about it that you have a plan so that things aren't always going to work out the way exactly that you want. Certainly not right away. But rarely things rarely come quickly in the sort of entrepreneurship world. You have to be patient. So make sure they have that time. But then also, if they really want to do it, then know that it's not going to be easy. You're going to have a ton of setbacks and hurdles to jump over, and so you got to really be prepared for that. But if you really want it in your heart of hearts, you know that you can do something else, that you have a bigger contribution to make to the world, then I say, once you've sort of checked those boxes and know that you're going to be okay, just take the leap, make it and believe in yourself and know that if you're following your curiosity and following what your gut is telling you to do, and you've got a plan, then it'll probably work out. It may just take a little while. And if it doesn't, it's not a bad idea to have a contingency plan. When I left law, the day I quit the law firm and walked out the door, I actually resigned from the Law Society. So I decided that if this thing didn't work out, and we kind of had a 1 to 2 year plan, but I would not go back to law. I decided that if I kind of had it too easy to go back in, I wouldn't jump sort of, both feet into the pool of entrepreneurship. So I decided if this doesn't work out, I'll figure something else out. I'll find another job. I'll do something else. But I actually severed my tie with the legal profession, severed my ties with the legal profession at that time, and decided I'm all in. I can't look back, burn the ships, all of that. That was my approach. So everybody's different. But I think that if, you only get one shot through this thing we call life, right? And I didn't want to have any regrets. And for me, I was having almost a visceral reaction in my body to work. So again, the firm I was at was great firm. They do great work. It was nothing against the firm or anyone personally there. It just, like you said, it didn't align with who I was and what I wanted to achieve in my life. But it took me some time to realize that. And I was there in total about 2 years. And then finally, I had the guts to take the leap, and also, a plan and something that we felt was an opportunity that if we worked really hard might work out. No guarantees, but we were willing to do whatever it took.
It's fascinating to me. You're like in my lane of what I talk about. And when I share burn the ships,
Hmm.
it's something you also said as well. It wasn't that you just burned the ships. So there was a plan that was there. You had a savings, you had something, and then you chose to do some things where you couldn't go back because you had a plan. And I think that's the first step, is make sure you have a plan. Just don't say, I
Yeah.
want to become a professional speaker, and all of a sudden you're jumping or to
Right.
whatever you want to do. That
Yeah.
might be the new alignment. Have the plan. And then you said something else that's in there. You didn't have an increased responsibility with other additional life events, having children like you have right now,
Yeah.
because that equates into the plan. So
Yeah.
that's brilliant. I have some other things. I'm not going to go down that road because I want to be about you. And the second thing is, I missed where you said how you all formulated the Speakers Bureau. What
Yeah.
was the impetus
from law to speakers bureau. Did you have any?
Yeah, not a
What's
normal
the bridge
career.
for? Help me with the bridge.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big bridge. So like many people that I know, and maybe yourself too, we don't know each other that well yet, but we sort of stumbled into this, right? So it's not something we set out to do. It's not like I had never seen a speaker before. Farah had never seen a speaker before. But what happened was her uncle was actually doing a little bit of speaking, small scale, not even keynotes, more like workshops and seminars. And when he found out that, that his niece was in marketing and PR, he asked her to help him out, sort of get the word out about his workshops and his seminars. And so that was how we stumbled into this world, totally by accident, because her uncle was doing a bit of speaking. Started to do a bit of research into it. And by the way, this is like 1995. So this is pre-Google, right? So thinking back, I don't even remember how we did research, because now it's just everyone just takes for granted. You just type in Google and you can find out everything you want to know about pretty much any industry. But we made a lot of phone calls, talked to a lot of speakers, a lot of conference organizers, did about 6 months of research, just learning about the industry. And, if we were to get into this, what could we do as a company that maybe where your needs aren't fully being met right now with whoever you're utilizing to hire speakers, or to, if you're a speaker, to represent you. And so we did that research just by talking to a lot of people, and that's how we stumbled into it. And I immediately was hooked. I just knew intuitively that this was something that I was interested in, because I think I'm a curious person by nature, and I love hearing people's stories, and I love ideas. And this was a business that was built around helping people share their ideas and their stories. And so I wasn't thinking about it in those terms, but I just kind of gravitated towards it and thought, this is fascinating. Like, I'm learning every day. I'm learning new things. I'm meeting interesting people. And so even though I didn't have any sales experience or anything else, I had no problem, like I was making 80 to 100 cold calls for the first 5 years, just like reaching out to event planners and so forth. And it was exciting. So really it was just following my curiosity, kind of told me that this was something. I didn't know what it would be. We had no idea how big the industry was. We didn't really have a formal business plan, but it was just like following our curiosity, and thought, this is cool. This is interesting. This is something that I could get excited about every morning, waking up and going to work. So that's kind of how it started.
I was doing a terror mission, total army involvement in recruiting, after I just had an amputation, and I was now working for the organization that I was once an athlete in for the army as a soldier. And I would just do a little, it's kind of song and dance. I was the MC, so to speak. I would introduce the next person. The athlete would then try to put troops in boots at the high school. And I would I'd tell a little quip, little story. I would say a little dad joke. I know you think my favorite restaurant's IHOP. And so I would do stuff like that as an amputee. And the recruiters started calling me back to say, could I put that together, a 35-minute presentation, because the kids are still talking about what I was doing there. And I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And they said, well, how much do you charge for that? And I said, let me get back to you on that one.
Right.
You can get paid to run your mouth. And the second one, was I didn't know anything about bureaus or anything like that. And I was still working for a job. So it was kind of side hustle, pay some vacation time, my son going to basketball camp and those type of things. And I got picked up by a good friend of ours, Tim Matthews, speaking and he sent me on something. And I said, well, how did you find me? He said, well, you beat me at 2 events. So I figured I'd put you on my team.
That's right. That's what Tim does. Yeah,
I didn't even know what events.
I love that. Tim always says, "Don't call me. I'll come find you when I lose.
I'll come find you." Right?
Yeah, when I lose a booking to you, I'll come find you. So that's great. Yeah, but it's amazing how so many people just sort of stumble into this. Now there's more awareness because of TED and other things like that. People are more aware that there's an industry and there's people who do this. But yeah, back in the day, like, it was not something that was really like well known at all. And so there was a big learning curve that we had to get through in the early days, and just educate ourselves about the industry, about different speakers and conference organizers.
So I want to shift a little bit and go to, you call yourself an unapologetic idealist. Help me understand what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, Idealist is, there's so much cynicism right now in the world, I find. And I choose to try to not live my life being cynical all the time. I want to be idealistic. I want to assume the best in people, and that's what I do until they prove me wrong. And I just believe that most people, not everyone, but most people are inherently good. And even when they screw up, it's often not their intention. They didn't want to do something. It's something. Sometimes things just happen. People make bad decisions in the moment, or things can just take place that don't go their way. So I just my way I go through life is I try to assume the best in people, and when I hear something, I listen to it carefully, but I try to find the best in what someone is saying. So that's the idealistic part, is not being cynical, but being, trying to see the best in people or in a situation. The unapologetic part, I guess, is that I don't think that's something to apologize for. I think that that's a good way to go through life. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, whether it's, politics or circumstance or whatever it is, have a lot of anger in them, and a lot, they want to dole the blame out to other people. And I understand that things happen and so forth, but I don't think, being idealistic is something to apologize for. I think it's something to be proud of. So that's where that comes from. And
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I heard Maya Angelou say, when a person shows you who they are, believe them.
right,
Right.
exactly.
And so we just assume the best intentions in people
Yeah.
until they show us who they are, one
Yeah.
way or the other.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about that from the standpoint of, seeing that, inevitably something's going to happen. So are there
Hmm.
any moments for you that would kind of stand out? They're like, oh, that was interesting. That kind of stood out for me. I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
expect that to go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing is I think I developed a pretty good sense of intuition, trust my gut a lot with people. So, I did some backpacking when I was younger, did solo backpacking for months, and when you're traveling on your own and you're living on $10 or $15 a day, you meet a lot of people and you got to size them up pretty quickly and figure out, who can I trust this person or not. And so before that, I don't think I had really honed that intuition, but yeah, despite that though, sometimes people fool you, and there's people who I trusted. I won't get into too many specifics, but in our business where we assume the best, and they disappoint you, and so when that happens, you kind of know, okay, it's fool me once, shame on you fooled me twice, shame on me, right? So someone does that, you're going to learn from it, and but because one person does something to disappoint me doesn't mean I'm now not going to trust everyone else. Because I do think most people are good and have good intentions, and so we trust our gut. But at the same time, you can't be naive, and so you got to watch people carefully. Like you said, believe when someone says or does something, believe them, and so going through with a sense of idealism, but also realism that you got to be careful. You got to protect your territory, so to speak, and not let people walk all over you. But I do really believe that if you treat people really well, that they're less likely to try to sort of screw you over than if you treat them with a lack of respect or a lack of trust. So it's just and the interesting thing is, going from law into this business, like when I was in law, we were trained, rightfully so, to assume that the person on the other side of the table was trying to screw over your client, right? Like that's your job, is to protect your client's interest. So especially in a corporate setting, or, so you kind of have to assume that that person on the other side of the table is, you got to think of every possible scenario, of every crazy, stupid thing that they could do that could impact your client. And so I trained myself to do that. But when I left law, this is, I guess, another thing that I sort of had to amputate, is going from distrust to trust. And when you meet people, assume that they have the best in mind and they're not trying to take advantage of you, they're trying to help you. And that was a shift that wasn't hard to make, because I think that's how I was raised and how I was more naturally wired. But once in a while, the lawyer part of me comes in, and you're sitting in a meeting or something, you're thinking something doesn't quite feel right, and I'm going to be careful in this situation, and I'm going to make sure that that we don't get taken advantage of.
When you're growing your team,
Wow, what an incredible first half of the conversation so far. A huge thank you to Martin Perelmuter for sharing his journey, his insights, and the wisdom he's gained along the way. Now, if something he said resonated with you, take a second, just take a second, and drop a comment. Let me know your biggest takeaway so far. And listen, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. You're the kind of person who values growth, learning, and transformation. So do yourself a favor, hit that like, share, and subscribe button so that you do not miss the second half of this conversation with Martin. Part 2 is dropping next week, and trust me, you don't want to miss the conclusion with my interview with Martin. We're diving a little bit deeper into what it really takes to elevate in business, leadership, and life. Want to go even deeper? Join my Elevate Life community, where I'm going to break down, and I continue to break down, the 3 biggest high-stakes transition strategies from this interview. I'll have that ready for you by 3 p.m. this Saturday. But strategy alone isn't enough, because without implementation and accountability, it's just talk. That's why on Tuesday, I'll hold you accountable, myself accountable, to what we're applying as we learn it. I know, nobody loves accountability, but this is how leaders step into the next level. This is how you elevate, through accountability. So mark your calendar, come back next week, and let's finish this journey together. Until then, amputate what's holding you back and elevate your mindset. Step boldly into your next level of success. Go forth and inspire your world. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.